It's 4 minutes gone past the hour of 9 o'clock in the morning time. Good morning to you, Grenada, Carrick, Petite Martinique, the rest of the Eastern Caribbean, to you wherever you are. It's a glorious, a wonderful Thursday morning. And indeed, I say thank you for being part of this conversation. Welcome back to our viewers on GBN's television. And, well, if you're in cable, we say thanks for being part of the conversation. Those of you in Classic, 105.5 and 105.9. And those of you that's joining us via our Facebook feed and our YouTube channel, thanks for being part of the conversation. It is Thursday, and it's as expected. We have representative from the Royal Grenada Police Force this morning. The conversation we're touching is around the issue of child abuse, and chiming in on the conversation as well is representatives from the Child Protection Authority. From the RGPF, Corporal Sherwin, Noel, and we have Lady Stantlebaury, Harwood, and Lady Harford. Yeah, for a split second I was second guessing myself. I was like, did I get it all wrong? So, my dear ladies, sir, thank you for being part of the conversation. Welcome to the program. Today we'll be focusing on child abuse, and as we can well appreciate, we are in the month of October, and it is Child's Month, and certainly the issue of child abuse, it's becoming a relevant one, not just within the context of Child's Month, but the context of who we are as we evolve as a society. Centered to this, the conversation regarding child abuse. We ask ourselves, we have the police, we have the RGPF. Well, I'll start with you ladies from the CP, the Child Protection Authority. What exactly is the challenge, the CPA? What's your role? What's your function? What do you do? And let's start with you, Lady Stantlebaury.
Well, good morning, everyone, and I would like to say thank you for the opportunity to be here this morning to share this important, to be a part of this important discussion. Now, Child Protection Authority is a statutory body, and we're charged with the responsibility for the care and protection of the nation's children. Now, we work in accordance with the Child Protection and Adoption Act, so that gives us the legal footing within our intervention. We focus mainly on preventing child abuse. Then we also respond to cases of abuse. So we may receive a report, it may come in, we may assign an investigating officer to go out and find out exactly what is happening with that child. And then we also have the adoption aspect of child protection and foster care, of course. And while I'm mentioning foster care and adoption, I think it's important that I chime in here because I want persons to take home the important role of CPA. Now, Child Protection Authority's mandate is not to do removal. I know it's an early part of the discussion, but I would like to bring it here as I mentioned foster care and adoption. Our mandate is not to do removal. Removal first is last resort. Now, if we receive a report, we would first go into the family, maybe jointly, and we'll discuss that later on in the conversation with the police, and investigate, find out what is happening. And out of that, we would create a care plan, a plan of action that may be done via a case conference. So we pull all the stakeholders in and we have a discussion, how can we help this family? We then monitor that intervention plan, right, that we would have created for the family towards restoration, towards protecting the child in the best interest of the children, because everything we do is guided by the best interest of the nation's children. We often see circumstances where parents do not want the intervention. They do not want the intervention. They're resistant, and maybe it's because of the perception of CPA and what we do. So we want to encourage persons that if CPA comes at your door, hear us out, hear why we're here. We're here to help, basically. And removal is really last resort. So if you're not working with us, the child may continue to be abused in the circumstance, or you're not seeing the issue as abuse, because sometimes parents protect the abusers. It's unfortunate, but we see that quite often, that they protect the abusers. And in a situation like that, then we may think if the parent is not willing to work with us, they're not willing to keep this child safe, then we now have to look at what is the best option for that child.
Okay, and I'm happy that we have attempted wanted to dispel that notion, because very often that's the approach to people that comes with it. You hear CPA and they're thinking, wow, they're here to take my child or children away from me. We, on the issue of abuse, Lady Harford, what are the different types of abuse? And because you hinted that the abuse may not be necessarily being committed by mommy or daddy, the person's directly overseeing them, but a third party. So how are these abuse normally, how can you identify whether or not a child is being abused? And where does abuse come from?
Okay, so child abuse is any when someone intentionally harms a child. So that can be sexually, physically, emotionally, or psychologically. It even involves neglect and abandonment.
Neglect and abandonment, like I leave you for 5 minutes to go to get a pound of rice and some back and egg to cook because you're hungry, or neglect and abandonment because I'm not accepting my role and responsibility as a parent or guardian.
Okay, so neglect can be, well, basically neglect of the child's basic needs. So food, health care, that kind of thing. Clothing, shelter.
The ability to feel safe, because you want to make sure that your child is safe, and that's why supervision is important. Sorry. When parents fail to provide the child's basic rights, we have the Convention of the Rights of the Child, which speaks to child rights. Parents have a responsibility to protect them children, yes, but also to provide the basic needs. The right to education, like my colleague would have mentioned, right to proper health intervention, rights to privacy based on the age of the child, and I know that could also be a touchy.
Look at how we open up Pandora's box here. Your right to privacy under my roof. You have the right to no privacy. Whatever happens under my roof, you do what I do. You say what you and that's the culture. And the thing as you talk about that, I mean, we can probably always segue to that. The issue, because it's quite not that any of the other segment isn't relevant, but this one is quite pertinent. We're going to get to Noel in a while. The issue of your right to privacy. What sort of privacy, what sort of rights is enshrined that allows a child to have anything private? I would love to know. Tell me.
Well, we look at the age of a child, and at what age should a child start to bathe themselves, or because as little girls, we used to be running around in the yard. Sometimes no panty, well, at that time we wouldn't need bras, but we were running around in the yard at that time. But as we get older, we now need to cover or protect ourselves.
So that's sort of privacy you're talking about personal privacy. Okay.
Yes.
I thought it was the privacy where mommy can't go in your phone because.
No.
Well, that's why I was like, okay, I want to talk about that one. So that's sort of privacy. Okay. Very often, because you both ladies hinted at the fact that the issues is quite a sensitive issue, and very often you would rely on the role of citizens, the RGPF, Noel, to be part of that conversation of ensuring not just by extension the greater population, but specifically we need as a nation to be able to keep our children safe. No questions asked about that.
Of course, Joseph, and as the representatives from the Child Protection Authority stated, no, they have that major mandate, yes. But as law enforcement, we too are obligated to assist in ensuring that right is afforded to the children, because like human rights, similarly. Generally, what tends to happen is that you find a number of persons in the community willing to assist the police, especially with issues of child abuse. And when we say child abuse, as Ms. Harford alluded earlier on, child abuse is not it's just a category of offense that we look under totally. But you wouldn't go into court and hear that individual is charged for child abuse. You might hear that they're charged for maybe causing harm or sexual assault, defilement, or as the case might be. As it stands now, there couldn't be a better time to have this discussion, as we already know that, from childhood, the month of October is designated as Child Month. We have a number of other things that we celebrate in October as well. But at the office in planning the schedule, we thought it very timely to, put this topic for discussion at this point in time. And again, to emphasize how important it is for our community to be actively involved. You know, very often you hear from different folks, especially the elder citizens, that it takes a community to raise a child. And what tends to happen over the years, through everyone becoming so self-sufficient and independent, that you find the community tend to disintegrate, and everybody is locked up in their own house about their own business. Ivan was just a touching time to bring back to our attention how important it is to have a community uniting. And so at times, yes, we want to maintain our privacy because we have things that we don't want other persons to get involved in. But infractions of the law is no excuse for having the community involved. We have seen, as videos in circulation as recent as yesterday, we have seen a number of incidents arising in schools, and from our research we can tell that is as a result of teachers being placed in that position when they are afraid to address issues based on what parents might do, and whereas the community members are afraid to address issues based on how a parent might come and approach them. So we find that the community feels sort of afraid to take action. But we want to reassure the community that the police, we are here to serve and protect you. Not only, in case of an incident happening, directly to you, but in case that you take action that is lawful and you're faced with threat by somebody else. Joe, it's something that we rely quite heavily on as a small, close-knitted community, is the cooperation of the public in solving crime. And child abuse is no difference.
And I must say that in more recent times, the last 10, 15 years, there's been an attempt by the RGPF to soften the culture. Normally when you hear police, you think big bad guys trying to rough me up when I do something wrong. But that culture has changed. And I'm also certain for the CPA, your mandate is more about prevention. You being proactive, so you don't sit there and hope something happens and then let me deal with the mother or the father or the parent. So too with the police, you identify concerns and you address it. So let's assume, where do reports come from and how is it handled? So we say you get a report and you start an investigative process. Take me through that process. A little nosy neighbor calls Noel and say, look, they see X, Y, and Z happening. Take me through that process.
Okay, so Joe, the nosy neighbor that calls,
and again, just for the most of the public, I'm only saying nosy neighbor because very often in those incidents, that's what you think. She too fast. She all up in my business.
Well, I was about to say that the neighbor might be only too nosy for the person or the perpetrator, right? Because the neighbor might as well be a hero for the victim. Right. But that person who calls, well, very often, we have SOPs for those sort of matters. The person, they're not compelled to disclose their personal information, but the important thing here is noting that the report was made. You try to get as much information about the report as possible. If anybody is injured, and it relates to child. That a child is someone who has not yet attained the age of 18 in our state. So you would first want to know the age of the person being abused. Mm-hmm. If not 18, then we still have to respond, Joe, but I'm just being relevant to child protection because it's a crime for the police as well still. So we want to get this information down packed to know, and then a situation of child abuse is always, require immediate response. So, and then we as police officers, we are mandated to inform Child Protection Authority of a situation like that. So immediately we would inform Child Protection Authority and act in the interim. So we would respond by dispatching officers to the scene of the incident and taking action as we see necessary. Sometimes a medical form may have to be issued. Sometimes the police would have to accompany the child to seek medical attention, or maybe make an arrest, an immediate arrest, as the case might be. Right. Or sometimes, it might require that, the police get CPA involved to do an investigation, a follow-up
Is it
investigation.
sometimes, or is it by default the CPA gets involved?
No. All incidences would require the Child Protection Authority being involved.
Right.
But there are times when you would immediately, they would respond together with the police, or they might even at times call the police for assistance in terms of responding. Now, there are incidences, as they would explain, they are here, so they would tell you, where they might have to visit a home to do a follow-up inquiry.
Right.
And they might think that it's challenging or a bit, risky based on the conduct of the parent or maybe the guardian in this case.
Let me ask you though, and I think it goes back to, and you hinted towards it at the beginning, that the CPA, it's mandated and it gets its authority from the law. And you sort of get the sense that most persons don't realize that. They think that the CPA is just a bunch of nice little wonderful pretty ladies who just figure, let me just get up one day and get involved in my business. You have a mandate by law, ladies, to do what you do, correct?
Yes.
Yes. So, like I mentioned before, it's called the Child Protection and Adoption Act, and it also speaks of mandatory reporting and who is responsible for mandatory reporting. And I think my colleague here is going to go through that in some details a little later. But again, it also speaks of the protection for the reporters, because a lot of times the person we get, if I report, they might know it's me,
Right.
And the law covers that protection, that they cannot be subjected to any suing, any civil proceedings or anything like that. There is a list. Unfortunately, I don't have my act with me, but it spells out specifically how they're covered on that
So
act.
it protects the child, and at the same time, it seeks to protect those who would make or submit information, provide information
Yes.
that would aid in protection of the child.
Yes.
So you can feel free as a member of the general public to call in to say, this is what I'm observing.
Yes. For your information, and you can look it up, I guess it'll be available online. It's section 29, subsection 1. So if you read that section, it would show you how you're protected under the Child Protection and Adoption Act.
We're keeping an eye on the clock, 22 minutes gone past the hour. We take a quick commercial break. When we come back, we continue with the conversation. And I'm seeing a question online from Antonio. What can CPA do to help that 11-year-old? Okay, I have to, where's the rest of that conversation? Antonio, I see your question online, and we'll respond to it when we come back from the break. To the point.
Introducing the NIS Dream Loan, where possibilities are boundless and your aspirations are our priority. No matter where life takes you, NIS Dream Loans are here to make your dreams a reality. From purchasing your first plot of land or dream property to renovating spaces, building your home, and seamlessly switching mortgages, we cater to every step of your journey. And here's what sets us apart. We offer easy financing options with competitive interest rates, quick approval processes, and flexible repayment terms. So why wait? Apply now and let our dedicated NIS team guide you through this exciting journey. Visit nisgrenada.org/dream loan or call 440-3309 to book an appointment. Terms and conditions apply. Your dream awaits.
The National Lotteries Authority is a proud sponsor of many cultural activities within the Trial State of Grenada.
My name is Anderson Matheson, also known as Leftist, and I'm a calypsonian and string band music player from Carrico. I support the games of the National Lottery Authority because culture benefits tremendously. Annually, the NLA supports the Carrico and Pittimatney Carnival, the Carrico String Band Music Festival, and all regattas, among other activities. When I play the game of the NLA, I can see where my money goes, and it's an investment into our culture.
Yes, Grenada, when you play the games of the NLA, you enable us to invest in the skills and talents of our people in the areas of sports, culture, and nation building.
Welcome back to the program. 25 minutes gone past the hour. In case you were just joining me, my guest this morning is representative from the RGPF Corporals, Sherwin Noel, and representatives from the Child Protection Authority, Ms. Stantlebaury, Harwood, and Harford. My dear ladies, sir, we agree wholeheartedly that as a nation, we must do whatever it takes to protect our children. There is a question that's coming from the online platform that's regarding a case of abuse, but the caller, the contributor online is saying, well, listen, little or nothing is being done because the perpetrator, they have connections. So if they call the police have that a friend, so nothing is being done. An 11-year, and in this case, they're making specific reference to a minor. Stantlebaury, how do we handle this one?
I think this is a good opportunity again to emphasize that the importance of reporting. If you feel that the perpetrator has the police in their back pocket, per se, it does not mean that you do not have a responsibility to report, right? One of the roles of child protection is also advocacy. We monitor the judicial process. We're a part of that. We offer support to that child. So if it is that the authorities is of the opinion that this case is not going anywhere, we would call, we would follow up, we would harass you, we would want to know what is going on with this child, what is going on with the case, where's the progress of it, where is it at, is it still under investigation, was it sent to the DPP for advice? A lot of the time the public is of the perception that nothing is being done. And I want to say that usually that's not the case, because we hear it sometimes with CPA that a referrer may call and say that they would have reported this case and nothing is being done. By law and by how we're structured, we respond to all cases of abuse.
But I'm assuming there is also due process.
There is due process, of course.
So you can't just jump up because John Doe says this is happening. Maybe even before you go to the person that's been accused, you'll do your investigation on the ground. And I guess that by itself, though, Harwood, Harford, can take quite a while.
Yes, it can. There may be delays in terms of willingness of parties involved to cooperate, lack of resources, not just by us, but even sometimes the police as well. To add, there's also a confidentiality aspect that we as Grenadians fail to respect or understand. So they may think nothing is being done or calling to request information, but there are things that, of course, we cannot disclose to public or persons.
Indeed. 29 minutes gone past the hour. We're going to open up the telephone lines to engage some callers. Good morning, caller. You're alive. Good morning, caller.
Yes, good morning, JC. And good morning to your guests. Have a good day. So, listening to these stories, sometimes my ears get tired because you're hearing this thing recurring so often, year after year, day after day, month after month. Unstopped, how do you stop these things? But I also discovered, because I've been following and studying this for quite a number of years, and I've been saying for so long, now how do you deal with this vexing matter? We are deteriorating socially, constantly, too fast. But you know something? The authorities, all the authorities, are attempting to manage people. So they'll give you clothes, they'll give you tie, they'll give you shoe, they'll give you food hampers, etc., and a little stipend, as I say, every month. That's it, and your salary is smaller, there is no salary. Why? Because the economy, we are afraid to talk the economy. every country, every situation should and must be run through an economy and commerce. But we're failing to get the economy expanded so that these things can be taken care of. People have the financial means to take care of their children, and children can get a job based on the economy. But we don't concentrate on that.
Okay.
We have a small population, high food prices, etc., etc. Yeah? And we still want the economy to deliver good monies, good salaries, and jobs. It will not happen. So these things that we have in with the young children and families will continue to escalate. It will continue to happen. The court cannot solve this problem. I could assure you that. Laws cannot solve it.
So what would you recommend, my dear sir?
I said over and over, we need expanded commerce. We need the economy to grow, to create opportunities for people.
Yeah, but allow me, sir.
Allow
me, because I think, Musa, you're losing me a bit. How does the expansion of the economy, how does that specifically deal with the issue of protecting our children and the fact that they are being abused? If you don't mind, I'll give you a minute.
Let me show you. A worker, a person, will have to come from Sotes to Walkington, St. David's to Walkington, Guelph to Walkington, Sotes to Walkington, yeah, for the same salary. Do it make sense? Why can't they work? So I am saying urbanize. To urbanize, you have to bring these economic opportunities in these countries. So we have to do infrastructure. There's a lot of infrastructure where you could put new businesses. Challenge the business people. Give them the areas. Give them the services.
Okay.
Let them see where to put their business, how to expand. But there is no room for that. So how do the business people expand when there is no infrastructure in certain place? You want them to put it? They will not put it, and they should not put it.
Okay, but I understand the argument that you're making, but okay.
So we are failing to do those things, and yet we want the economy to deliver. We don't have an economy to deliver to prevent those things.
Okay, thank you, sir. Appreciate your contribution. 435-2041, that's the number on the inside. Just to add, that contributor that is online, I'm assuming that by virtue of the fact that an online contributor has raised a concern about an 11-year-old, I would assume by virtue of that, the CPA police would automatically attend to it.
Yes.
Because I'm assuming the fact that the public has a right to notify, once you receive any reports, it will be investigated.
Yes.
Okay. So online contributor, Antonia, is it? Feel. I want you to feel assured that the fact that you've raised a concern, it will be investigated. I'm not sure where you are, but if you want to provide additional information on the issue, you can feel like I give him call the GBN. I give him my number 456-3454, or you can feel free to call the CPEA,
Child
Protection Authority. What's your number?
It's 435, 0293 or 533-6990.
So Antonio, feel free. Give them a call, 435-0293, and you can continue. You can raise your concern from there. We go back to the telephone lines. Good morning, caller. You are live.
Yes. Hi. Good morning.
Yes. Good morning. You're live.
Yes, I'm calling to find out if there are any plans in place to build a safe home for kids who have been abused. Well, in St. Andrews especially.
Okay, thank you, caller. Does it fall under the purview of the CPA whether or not there's a plans to get a home in the St. Andrew area?
Child Protection Authority, we're in the process of reviewing the services that we're offering. We currently manage 2 childcare homes, and of course we're in collaboration with the others. That is the Queen Elizabeth Home for Children, the Bel Air Home for Children. We recognize that there may be, I think our focus now is more on transitional homes for children who are aging out of the system. It's something that we're looking at to see how can we, better support that category of clients.
But I would assume, based on the concern that the caller has made, there's always the need for expanding your offerings, whether it's in St. Andrew or anywhere else.
There's always a need. Always.
Yes.
425-2041. We go back to the telephone lines. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Yes, good morning.
Yes, good morning.
Your guests encourage mandatory reporting, and they encourage the community to report abuse. But there is a persistent problem with the phone lines. Child Protection has maybe 4 or 5 different numbers, and you will call them all repeatedly for days, and they are not working. So that's a problem. If we are out there trying to protect abused children, you need to have a system where your phone lines are working. Second of all, when you do get through, the officers promise to come, and you wait and wait and wait, sometimes as much as 2 weeks before someone comes out and take a peek. That's not good enough. Also, once these cases are opened, the officers following up the case, sometimes they get too close to the perpetrators, too close to the family, to the people who are doing the abuse, and when they get continued reports, they start protecting the abusers and warning them, look, someone said this, someone said that. They start protecting the abusers, the parents and the guardians who are abusing, rather than the children. So the officers need to be neutral, they need to be professional, they must never get too close to where they find themselves abusing, protecting the abusers rather than the children. They need to, and also officers need to investigate the condition of the homes before placing vulnerable children back into homes or in the care of foster parents. Sometimes they take a child that's been abused and reintroduce them back into the same house. They need to make sure that the living conditions are okay and acceptable before they take children and put them into foster homes or put them into homes of family members who agree to take care of abused children. And also for the host, I find when every phone call that comes in, you tend to like to argue with the person who calls in. Let the guests respond. You're spending too much time responding, talking and combating the caller rather than sometimes just let the views be heard, leave it alone and see what your guest needs to say. Thank you so much for allowing me to call in. I appreciate it.
Thank you very much, caller. Although I'm trying to forget what you guess on my... Anyway, moving right along. 23 minutes. And let me just clear the air on this. The reason why I engaged the caller, because very often, sometimes callers make assertions, they make queries, that if I'm not able to understand what is it they're saying, my attempt is to clear the air, so at least you, the general public, gets an appreciation. Sometimes things have been said, and sometimes callers, they go off on a tangent. So the idea is to reel the conversation back in so that we can focus on the issue. But I do appreciate your comment just the same. 45-2041, that is the number that is on the inside, in case. So let's go back.
Yeah, sure. Before, just in addition to the conversation that we was having, or relevant to the conversation, now, I don't want people to get the idea that, a child have to come from a poor family to be abused. That seems to be the whole essence, that the thoughts of people out there is that children who comes from less fortunate families are the ones being abused. We want the public to clearly understand that we have abused children coming from different status quo, and not only the vulnerable, because I myself grew up in a less fortunate family, and we had very not much, but we did make what we have do. And the essence of grooming your child, teaching your child good values and stuff is very important in terms of the growing your child and having your child stay on, as you say, on real. we find that parents are moving away from, instilling good values and more looking at academics. They want the child to perform well in school, and that child grows without discipline, and sometimes that's the key factor in what would lead to a child becoming vulnerable and getting abused. Now, this is the takeaway I want the general public to get from that. Don't only look at the lower strata of children in society, but look generally, and you would find different behaviors. You have to look for, when you're looking for abused child, you would look for the conduct. The conduct, and that speaks a lot. Sometimes you have to know how to engage. And the police, again, it was said that, yes, we know of police officers who go, outside of what is expected of them in accordance to what the police force mandates. So we know that there are police officers who may be corrupt. We know that there are police officers who may have friends that they may choose to pardon. But generally, that is not the case. What we are saying is that if a caller calls the station, make a complaint, and I'm saying station here because we speak in generally, you make a complaint and that matter is not, addressed in a timely manner, then you can call the Community Relations Department and at 440-3764 and bring the issue to our attention so we can look into that. But generally, all the police officers in the station wouldn't be that perpetrator's friend. So if you call and you don't think that you're getting attention, then call back maybe on the next shift when somebody else is working. Ask to speak to the officer in charge.
Take it.
Ask to speak to the supervisor, and do something to ensure that your complaint, at least is dealt with or addressed in a timely manner. So we're not saying that you take 2 months after to call community relations and say, listen, I reported that matter to Grenville Police Station 2 months ago and the police didn't respond. You would call maybe based on the nature of the incident that is happening, you would call in a reasonable time. And I'm agreeing with that.
She touched on a very serious issue that you made reference to, and I guess it comes down to the issue of professionalism training, getting too close. How do you keep that center of the issue and not get too emotionally connected to it?
Okay, so I want to say, and specifically to the previous caller, we're always guided, and I'm going to emphasize this again, the best interest of the child, right. Not the parent, not the abuser, and based on the circumstances, we don't work with the abuser in cases of sexual abuse. Another stakeholder would work with the abuser. I also want to shed some light in terms of what we do and how we do it. Now, we have a 24/7 system. It's called our duty system, where persons are rostered to be on call. That person is on call, one individual per district is on call from 8 o'clock in the morning to 4 p.m. during the day, and then someone bumps in on shift from 5 p.m. to 8 a.m. the next day. And then we have someone that's on call on Friday afternoon, 4 p.m. till 8 a.m. on Monday morning. Now, we always have someone managing the duty line. Right. So once a report comes to the authority, we first do an initial assessment, and that is now going to inform what step we should take. So in some cases, we would require immediate response. So that duty person on that duty system is responsible to respond right away.
Okay.
Now, if based on our assessment, that case can then be assigned, and that person now will schedule an investigation, right? So we do an initial assessment, and that would inform the response time. But we try as much as possible to respond to cases as quickly as we can.
Well, initially we did mention the challenge of resource.
Yes.
And that is always going to be a challenge as society evolves. The need to get additional resources, whether it's lines, personnel, or whatever it is. But a question coming, I'm going to go back to the telephone line in just a bit, caller. Via social media, and this person is asking, I'm wondering, what's a law in Grenada if an 11-year-old shows up in a doctor's office and, pregnant?
So,
what happens there?
Let me go back to mandatory reporting. And it says that this section applies to, say, a healthcare practitioner, a dental practitioner, an allied health practitioner, registered, and that person have to be registered pursuant to the Health Practitioners Act. They say a nurse or other mental health practitioner. And B, so that is one category of persons that are, obligated to mandatory reporting.
By law.
By law. B, an administrator of hospital facility. Yeah. C, a school principal, teacher, or other teaching professional. D, a social worker or other social service professional. E, any owner, operator, or employee of a child care service. So you're speaking here about daycares, or so. E, an owner, operator, or employee. Well, that was EF. A guidance counselor. G, any person who by virtue of his employment or occupation has a responsibility to discharge a duty of care towards a child. So, by virtue of your duty, so it could be a child is left in your care at a home or so. Yeah.
Okay. So I think,
and it has a number of others. So Joe, yes, by virtue of that child going to the doctor and being pregnant at that age, the doctor doesn't have a discretion on that.
What if, and you can all chime in, if it's a case where that individual, they decide, you know what, I know the mother, father, I don't want to bring disgrace to the family, and especially in cases where very often, if, as the person is saying, if it is determined that the perpetrator is a family member, what is the law? What's the recourse? Does the law then go after those individuals, Noel? Oh.
Indeed, that person can be subjected to a summary conviction where they can be fined. I believe it's $5,000 or terms of imprisonment no more than 3 months imprisonment. So yes, that person can be charged.
Okay, so it is safe to say that under the Child Protection Act, it makes allowance in all cases to protect the child.
Yes, as Ms. Harwood rightfully said, I'm in Stantlebaury. Harwood, sorry. And she said a person who contravenes the section, he commits an offense and is liable on summary conviction to a fine not exceeding $5,000 or to a term of imprisonment not exceeding 3 months.
So the law is quite clear.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go back to the telephone line. Good morning, caller. You're live.
Good morning, Mr. Cadore.
Good
morning to your guest. Mr. Cadore, one of your callers made some statements about all the areas that cannot and will not help in having people be better people. Laws cannot do it. Money can. No matter, you're talking about the economy. What people need, Mr. Cadore, is not, well, money is necessary, but money cannot change people. In order to have a society where things are what they're supposed to be, the things that we desire to see in a society, they must have a connection with the Lord. One of your guests was talking about parents and not teaching good values. Values come from God. God created man, and he gave us a manual. Like everything people manufacture, they have a manual to tell the user how to use it. God made us, put us there, and he gave us a manual. But when you ignore the manual, it's obvious it's chaos you're going to get in trying to use these things and to get it to go the way you want it to go, because you ignore the manual. So when we turn back to the manual, I think the Child Protection Authority, maybe the police force, should really have somebody who can impart spiritual values to people. They need that. As the church is dead, I don't know. But you're not hearing that this is a time we need more spiritual values. We need God in our society more than ever before. And as long as we're going to continue to stay away from God, we're going to continue to have unsolvable chaos. Because only God, there is a devil that is there. There is a devil in the world. And we don't want to hear about him because we don't want his name to be called. He's walking underground and in silence. But we need to turn to God to get the devil out of our lives. He's the one that's causing all the problems.
Okay,
Thank you very much.
Thank you. It then begs the question, and I'm agreeing, what if the perpetrator, is in fact a clergyman? And I'm just saying that so that we can expand the conversation. And I think dealing with these social issues, it requires a multi-pronged approach. And while, yes, I agree that spiritual intervention, it is needed, not just in case of child abuse, but for living, the reality is that there must be laws, systems, and structures in place, because you find there are cases where the persons who you hold in high esteem, the clergymen, the pastors, and we've had a case even recently, a couple of years ago, where that was the case, and the law, we didn't get reprieve locally, but in the U.S. it happened. So I think we need to be open on the conversation and not be too myopic about it. 435-20-2041. That's the number on the inside. We go back to the telephone lines. Good morning, caller. You are live.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
Yes, sir. A question is a question. And nobody should give a lecture, especially when they think they are in authority. Let me say me substantial thing now. Now, every one of us talking about economy and this and that, but it's how you go, how the people being trained. The child would either behave bad or will become a delinquent, or even the parents could be a delinquent, depending on the concept of life. Now, many things could help to cause that. Maybe the mother might be abusing the child, or the child abusing the mother, depending on the age of the child. Doesn't matter how small or how large a child is, or how old or how young. They learn by the experience. And once you have some sort of a controversy in a home, especially home where you have one parent living, this might help to cause some economic strangulation, and this would cause either the mother to abuse the child or the child to abuse the mother. So as an expert or as experts, when people go to visit people, they cannot take what the complaint made by other people or even by the same parent. The people who go to investigate the complaint should investigate it logically and don't take side. Maybe this is why we always have aggravation, because some people take side and they don't give the right advice. That's my take on those people that are abusing people. Maybe they see people in the community abusing people, and that's why they have to abuse. They say example is better than, I wanted to say the word precept. So a lot of us complaining, but we are not setting good example.
Thank you, caller. 8 minutes on to the hour in the morning time, and I know we started the conversation, but certainly we just literally tipped. It's just the tip of the iceberg. Are there different types of abuse, and how can you recognize if a child is being abused? Harford?
Yes, there are different types of abuse. As I highlighted earlier, we have sexual, emotional, physical. So signs of physical abuse would include bruising, fractured bone, that kind of stuff. Emotional or even sexual, some of them will be similar. So you may see bedwetting based on the age of the child, isolation, that change in their behavior. Some can be said to have aggressive behaviors. A child that's well spoken, or they would now be a bit quiet, reserved. So you look out for those signs.
Yeah. I'd like to touch on because sometimes sexual abuse, so let's go a little bit deeper into sexual abuse. Because sexual abuse does not necessarily mean that you have to have a sexual contact, physical contact with a child. It's also exposing that child to pornography, or letting the child watch you masturbate or touch yourself, or watching the child masturbate and touch himself. So sometimes we believe that if the child is watching pornography or some sexual content on the television, that it cannot be considered. So I just want for parents to be mindful of what we expose our children to, and it's also important to teach them about themselves, about their body, who should touch where, who should not touch where. And while we're on that, I wanted to bring to the discussion the importance of your parenting approach in prevention, because you spoke of prevention earlier, and you want your child to feel safe to come to you, to speak to you. So develop that type of relationship with your child. Oftentimes what we see based on our intervention or history, we've noticed that if a child was abused by someone, that child is now fearful of telling mommy or fearful of telling daddy. And in cases where they tell mommy or daddy, the first response does be to beat that child. Right? So let that child know that you're there to protect them, let them feel safe, know their friends, know their whereabouts, know who they interact with, and create a non-judgmental atmosphere for that child. So let them know that you're not going to blame them if something should happen. And I think if we start developing that type of relationship with our children, it can go a long way in prevention. Another issue in terms of the physical abuse and what we deem physical abuse varies, based on our culture, based on our own upbringing. A lot of times you hear parents say, well, my mom beat me and nothing happened to me. So they don't see physical punishment, corporal punishment, as abusive, right? And we're saying that once you beat a child that results in bruising to the skin, it's considered abuse. And another thing is, what we want to tell parents is that when you're disciplining a child, tell them why, right? Don't just beat a child. Or if you're telling a child that they cannot do X, please explain to them why. When you develop that type of relationship with your child, they learn, they better understand why they shouldn't be doing, because a lot of times we just say, don't do this or don't go there, but we don't say why. And I think that can go a long way in reducing and empowering that child to protect themselves.
We have a caller online. Good morning, caller. Go ahead, you're live.
Yeah, good morning. It's a very interesting program this morning, but the thing about it, which I don't understand, is that what's about the children who cannot have a voice for themselves, like those from the different homes, because some of them, they're also abused by workers there. So what is the procedure that the Child Protection Order, or, one of the guests might be able to answer, because there are lots of times children in these homes abused by the workers. So because they don't have a voice, so we have a voice for them. So what is there for these young children there? I mean, they cannot help themselves, they cannot speak or nothing. So even though you do them something, they can't tell you.
Okay, thank you, caller.
What is it there? What is it there that they'll be able to do the Child Protection Order? Do they visit these homes on a regular basis to see what's going on? Do they make just random checks and see what's going on, or things like that? These things can come a long way and help to protect these children who cannot help themselves in the different homes. I'm speaking from experience because I know. Thank you and have a blessed day. Bye.
Thank you, caller. I think it's safe to say we did cover that, but we're probably just going to summarize it as we get a chance to wrap. I wanted to introduce them, but we're just going to, because we're almost out of time for today's segment, though, as we're talking about what is age-appropriate exposure for children. So you sit at home with a child and you're watching adult content on television, on the devices, because kids, they have their mobile devices, and I'm assuming under the Electronic Protection Act, it also, so persons better be cognizant of that. Well, I didn't let him watch it, but I sent them a video. Is it an age-appropriate video for a 9-year-old to be looking at? And someone make the excuse, well, I'm trying to educate them on certain things. So even as part of that conversation, you have to be mindful as to the age that the child is at and what is appropriate and what is inappropriate. Correct?
Yes.
We are almost out of time for today, but before we do that, though, we're just going to summarize. I'm going to give you a minute Corporal Noel. And ladies, I want us just to again summarize the protocol that we did say that under the Child Protection Act, it clearly defines the need for mandatory reporting by all stakeholders, and failure to, it does spell out the penalty, Noel.
Right, so the penalty is $5,000 or a term of imprisonment for 3 months.
$5,000. Think about it. So, and to all and sundry, whether you're a school teacher, you're a healthcare worker, doctor, whatever it is that you have, you're mandated by law to report.
And again, for the last caller, if you recognize, it was mentioned that anyone who might be the person in charge of or employee or so, they have the obligation to report incidents of child abuse. So if they fail to do, and then maybe it's your duty as well to report to the Child Protection Authority or the police, as the case might be. So again, you have a you may not be obligated to report, but it's your civic duty as a citizen to report the incident of child abuse once you have knowledge of it.
Thank you. Haywood?
Any child in a childcare home, they have a social worker attached to them. They also have a key worker, and they also have a counselor. Right, so there's 3 persons besides the other staff, of course, that interacts with that child. Now, as an authority, the same standards that we expect persons to uphold in their home is the same standard we expect to uphold in our organization. So no one is above the law. I just wanted to make that clear to the last caller.
No one is above the law. Harford, final thoughts from you?
Sorry, I had a moment.
That is fine. I think it's safe to say that we all agree that the law is there, but very often I think sometimes it's the lack of knowledge, us not knowing what is contained therein, because people seem to think, well, things just happen and there is no repercussions for it. The law clearly states, the Act clearly states that whoever is the stakeholders, they are, I think, each and every one. So that immediate stakeholders, and they're us as members of the citizenry who have, while we may not be mandated based on our professionalism, our profession, but as citizens, we all have a responsibility. And I think I'm just going to share that with you on your behalf. We all have a responsibility to ensure that whether or not as a mother, a father, a friend, a citizen of Grenada, we all have a responsibility to protect our children. They are our greatest assets. If we destroy them now, what then are you leaving for our country, our society for tomorrow? I often keep saying the society that we have now, where we become aggressive and we seem to have lack of respect for our authorities. I keep saying I don't blame the children now. I blame the errors that was made by adults 30 years ago by giving in to children and not understanding that you need to protect them. We grew up in a days, remember you went all of these arcade games, violence, street fighters, and we didn't think much about it, Noel. But I grew up with Nintendo and all of these things, fighting, knives, guns. We saw it on television, we played it, and never did you ever think that these kids that you enjoyed growing up, I enjoy Street Fighter. If you spend your greater part of your childhood in video games that only highlights violence, what do you think is going to happen 20 years later? You grew up into a culture where you think violence is okay. Where you think, some of us, you grew up into a culture where we think it is okay to abuse our children. Let it be known that we live in a zero-tolerance society where we say no to those acts of perpetrators, we say no to the perpetrators, and understand that the law is there for the lawless. Until then, this is where we leave the conversation. I want to say thanks to Corporal Noel and thanks to my 2 representatives from the CPA, Stantlebaury, Harwood, and Harford. Until another place and time, we say thanks for being of the conversation. Tomorrow, Friday, we join from the folks from the Inland Revenue, looking at some of the changes that's been made in the tax structure and how it affects you as Grenadians. Until then, JC loves you. Have yourself a great one.